Okay, Josh, this episode is going to focus on the first movement as you've defined it and as you've placed it as the first movement. And it is shame to dignity.
Welcome back to Becoming Whole, a journey through 6 spiritual movements that help us integrate faith and sexuality, especially for LGBT and same-sex attracted Christians. My name is Josh Proctor, and I've been spending the last 6 years learning about and engaging with these movements. As you have already heard from Sarah Claire, today we are hopping right in to the first movement of shame to dignity. Shame affects so much in our world today, regardless of gender or sexual identity.
It's a neurobiological, neurochemical, physiological response.
Yeah.
It is the single most powerful human response to external stimuli and is the cause of literal all things that are, what do we want to call sin or what we want to call harmful, addictive, abusive behaviors, I believe are all rooted in this shame we speak of.
In my work over the years, I have heard the stories of so many queer people.
But I remember I had some feelings for one of my friends.
And one of the most common themes in every story is shame.
Someone told him that I had developed feelings for him. And then he met with me to talk about how he felt about learning about my feelings. As he was describing how uncomfortable it made him feel, I just felt ugly and repulsive and so unworthy. I just wanted to hide. Just profound shame.
We experience shame in so many areas of life, from family to school, general society to church.
So any sort of sermon that mentioned queer people, there's something about that experience that I felt where it's like, oh my gosh, everyone in here knows they're talking about me. Like my body would react. The language often used to describe queer people in church was always like these people are like less than human in a way, like there's something majorly wrong with them. That is a very constant experience that I had, where not only would I feel ashamed, but my body would react.
The curious thing about shame, though, is that you don't have to experience victimization or marginalization to internalize shame. So where does it come from at the root of it all? And what exactly is shame? We often know how it feels. We have experienced it in our bodies. But what is it? And how does it affect the way we live? The most obvious way that this manifests in queer experiences is the closet. Ultimately, it's the question of, what do we do with it? How do we combat it? But also, why do we start here? Why this is the first one, even of the early movements, which there being 3, I would say this is the first one that just yells at us because we begin to get suffocated by the closet. Sarah Claire and I continue talking as we explore queer shame and finding dignity in God's love. Come join us as we continue talking.
So, let's just start with a definition of how you are defining shame.
Yeah. I use the definition of shame as the belief that at the core of my being, I am unlovable. I was really impacted by the definition by Alan Downs in the book Velvet Rage, because he defines it in that way of like, we are often born into a world that is not set up for us as queer people. Like, it is set up for straightness. It's set up for heteronormativity. And because of that, we very early recognize that we're different.
Yes.
And that difference, when it cannot be communicated, when it cannot be processed, gets internalized as a sense of less than. And so then we believe that we are less than, we are unlovable. And so then we will try to find safety from that, either by creating walls or trying to earn it or any of those kinds of ways. And I think even scripturally, we see this in like the ways that in the garden story in Genesis 2 and 3, you see how the first humans have this defiant moment from God, and then it makes them hide. Automatically, shame always pushes us to hide.
Yes.
Because we don't want other people to see it, because it's the thing that we think makes us unlovable. But the irony is, like, that makes us feel more shame.
Yes.
The hiding,
yes.
It's a cycle. And I've really, as I was working through this, like to think of shame as like an alarm. It shows that something's wrong. It doesn't mean that like we've necessarily done something wrong, but it shows that there's something wrong happening. There's something that's not right. Either
it doesn't feel safe.
Yeah, it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel like we're going to be protected. But then what happens is we store that. Rich Villodas in the book Deeply Formed Life that I mentioned in the last episode said, when we hold on to secrets, our bodies often manifest the poison we've stored in our psyches.
Yes.
Right? It's just like...
It's a neurobiological, neurochemical, physiological response.
Yeah.
Shame.
You engage this all the time.
Oh my gosh, every day, all day. It is the single most powerful human response to external stimuli, you know, to feeling wrong, to feeling bad, to feeling unlovable, unsafe, and is the cause of like literal all things that are, what do we want to call sin or what we want to call harmful, addictive, abusive behaviors, I believe are all rooted in this shame we speak of.
Yeah. That often it's even that, that shame then many times leads us to all of these behaviors out of trying to make ourselves safe.
Yes, yes.
And I think the way that this often, the most obvious way that this manifests in queer experiences is the closet.
Yes.
This belief that it is my queerness that makes me unlovable because I am in a world that is not really made for that. And like, obviously there's some of this from victimization, some of this from, you know, homophobia and all of this, but we've even found there has been research that has shown that even in very accepting countries, just the natural way that like society moves towards heteronormativity is internalized by queer children as this is, I'm different and less than. So you'll even have this kind of shame experiencing in places that would generally be accepting and helpful, but it's the way that the child is viewing the world that I see this and I don't fit into that. Yeah. And therefore I need to hide this. Which I thought was really fascinating as we've like seen a lot of these things. I'll put some of these in show notes, like some of these research points. But I think then what happens especially is what I started to learn, and this was a big part of learning for me about shame related to the closet, because I think we focus so much on, for queer people, you're afraid people are going to reject you because you're gay or you're trans. And so then you don't tell people. So the main thing is telling people. And then that's like the solution, which I would say is. But I think one of the things I began to realize working in the spiritual formation, because remember, I started this as a very openly gay man. I was like, okay, I'm already done with that. Yeah. I'm good. Yeah. But I think what I realized, and again, Alan Downs talks about this in Velvet Rage, and then Matthew Todd in his book, The Straitjacket, explores the idea that what the closet does is it teaches us that I find safety in hiding and lying. Yep. Which then translates, even after I come out of the closet, translates to other places.
Because that's already a pattern. It's already a neurological pattern that was put in. So then, of course, that's how you're going to cope.
That's how you're going to cope. Whether that's, well, I'm not going to tell my loved one I'm going to this place. Or I'm just going to leave this out. Yep. or, and it's small ways, maybe ways that you really don't even feel are going to like be bad.
Yeah.
But it's the idea that I hide. And then this leads to so many issues of affairs.
Yeah.
Leads to so many issues of like dual lives, dual living. I think one of the things I really found was you have a lot of queer people, they come out of the closet, and as they're exploring, it's a part of it is a natural thing. I don't want it to, I still don't want to shame this. It's a natural aspect of as you're exploring your queer identity, you do it with specific safe people. That's separate from this. So you create two versions of yourself.
Yeah.
And you'll find multiple different versions of yourself. And I think that this is another part of it's compartmentalization.
Yes.
That what we are doing is exploring ourselves, but in safe spaces. But then only in this spot is this part of me safe, and only in this part.
Yeah.
And that's a natural aspect that we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But then obviously the really good work is how can we integrate those things together?
Because in an extreme expression of that creates like a dualism that can be very harmful. Again, in a less extreme, it's pretty normal for all of us to, show different parts of ourselves. But you're saying the default mode of withholding what feels unwelcome or unlovable really can like cause harm and disintegration.
Yeah.
So the bringing back together and trying to find that holistic space to be yourself.
Yeah. And I think that even like, again, a lot within queer spaces is the move for acceptance and all of this from general society will often then move to a desire for that acceptance within the queer community.
Yeah.
And how do I create a false self in the queer community that becomes acceptable there because I want to be gay enough. I want to be liked enough. I want to be fit enough. I want to be lesbian enough. I want to be trans enough. And so we even sometimes find ourselves because we're like, oh, is this how gay people act? I'm going to be as shady as all of the other gay people.
Yeah.
I'm going to start, doing these things because, and it's not bad. You explore. And you, as long as you can explore it and figure out, oh, okay, is this me?
Is this authentic?
Is this authentic?
Or is this,
Yeah, like that's fine. But then often we can put ourselves into these spaces where then also other people then look at us who know us and go, that's not you, or at least not the you I've known. And maybe it is you, and who knows. But again, part of this is just a natural journey.
Yeah.
But being able to recognize that as I'm engaging in spaces, I am going to either engage with the desire to be acceptable, even as I release that desire from general society, often will get translated to somewhere else. And very often with queer spaces, it becomes translated to the queer community, to your specific
or a person you're trying to be with.
Whoever is like, because that desire for the acceptance doesn't just suddenly go away.
No. Like whoever can provide that approval.
Yes.
Is like,
Because often we come out when we initially recognize, I'm not going to get this from society.
Yeah.
That's what pushes us to come out. I'm not going to get this here. So I might as well come out. I might as well share because I've tried to, whether you've gone through conversion therapy, whether you've just tried to hide it, whether you've gotten into an opposite sex relationship, you've tried to gender conform, all of these ways, we try to do it. We recognize that's not going to work. And when we finally realize, okay, I'm not going to be acceptable in this way, I might as well come out. Naturally, we're going to go to, well, then where can I be acceptable?
Yeah.
But it's also still on the outside, the outside circumstances and things. And so I think this is where I see the root of this kind of shame feeling of it still goes to, even when we come out and even when we are engaging in the LGBTQ community, there's still this idea of I'm unlovable and I need others to show me that I'm lovable, whether that means by having more sex with people, by, with a partner, with just general acceptance in my community, with my group of friends, all of these things, we're searching for that ability to work against the message that we've so deeply internalized because we've never known anything else.
Yes.
It's just been what we've known. So you may remember last episode, I shared a quote from Jay Stringer where he speaks about what he calls lust management. In the same quote, he also addresses the polar opposite, which is called shame management.
And, the other side, I would say this is much more of a mainstream cultural connotation, is that it's shame management. And shame management, in many ways, I don't have a huge beef with. But their approach is that if you began to remove some of the shame and the stigma associated with your sexual choices, then you're essentially going to become healthier. I'm all for removing shame and stigma, but one of the things that shame management really misses is the critical task of inviting people to make meaning out of their sexual lives.
Shame management is the natural direction we go towards after coming out as queer people. We see the shame we have internalized in our lives, which propels us to come out, the victimization that we have faced. And of course, we don't want that shame anymore, but rather than doing the introspective work of looking within, we simply try to avoid the outward stimuli, which seems to press on the shame. It's natural to avoid external experiences which elevate shame, but after a while we will realize that it doesn't eliminate the shame, it just manages it. In order to address the shame, we have to confront it. J. Stringer, in his book Unwanted, gives the biblical image of the bronze snake in the book of Numbers. Israel breaks its covenant with God and subsequently is attacked by poisonous snakes. The solution, which God provides, is that they need only look at the image of a bronze snake, the very image of their shame, and they will be healed. Shame can only be ignored for so long. True healing comes by confronting it. As I worked on this episode, the editing and everything, I was going through so much content, so many audio files, interviews, and things. And I started to feel like I was losing track of the direction and what all needed to come in and all of these things. So I ended up calling up a few friends. And of course, the first person I called was Lynn Melone, my gay mother. Or at least that's the title I have given her. I know I'm also going right off the gun. You have gotten no questions from me previously.
It's fine. I'll talk about anything, anytime.
Lynn is a member of the Church of the Sojourners in San Francisco and a frequent guest on the Life on Side B podcast. And Lynn had so much wisdom to share.
That kind of doubting your very existence as worthy is so deep, and it causes so many problems. Everything from self-hatred to almost the opposite extreme, that I'm going to prove that I'm worth something no matter what, and going sort of off in all kinds of deep dives in odd directions. I think particularly for folks in the church who are brought up to believe that God loves everybody except me, that can be the most damaging of all. And when a lot of queer kids grew up with that message, and that is just fatal. Let's talk about moving on from that. Moving on from shame to dignity requires rewiring your whole nervous system, which is deep. I mean, literally deep in your bones, deep in your brain. Because when we learn shame, we learn to hide. It's a fear reaction, it's a trauma reaction, and we deal with it the way we deal with our other traumas: fight, flight, fawn, freeze. And learning that our very existence is a threat to us is deep. So moving out of that takes deep work. And some do it through the love of one other individual, or finding that one support person that can really help them believe you are worth love. You are worth existence, sometimes is the first step. Other people get it from deep theological dives. And so for some people, they move out of shame to dignity through the very scriptures that were used against them. For other people, it takes therapy. And I'm one of those. And one of the first things that my therapist said to me was, you need to start hanging out with people who like you. Because she realized that, in a lot of environments I've been in, I was always assuming that I was not likable, that I was not lovable, that I wasn't worth it. She said, that can't be true. I know you have friends. You need to spend time with them and listen to what they say about you. And I think, especially for queer folks, the love of our friends can take us a long way to helping us accept ourselves as lovable and as worthy. But it took a therapist to tell me that.
So speak about why this is the first movement.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the reason why this is the first movement is because this is something we're aware of from so young.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the closet, it's like the first thing that any of us engage with,
Mm-hmm.
It is what stands out in our minds. There's a great quote from an amazing dear friend of mine in his blog, Gregg Webb, who says, "The closet is a cold, dark, vicious lie told by the devil to keep us away from God and from those around us."
Mm-hmm.
And it's this idea that we live in that from the beginning.
Yeah.
And when we can finally recognize it, because some of us don't recognize it immediately, it will naturally be the first thing that we're engaging with, even if we can't call it shame.
Mm-hmm.
So I think obviously why this is the first one, even of the early movements, which there being 3, I would say this is the first one that just like yells at us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we begin to get suffocated by the closet.
Yes.
And even at least as we can initially have that first coming out, even if it's just a self coming out, like I'm going to come out to myself. I've talked to a lot of gay people who they'll talk about that first moment that they just say verbally to themselves, I'm gay.
I am. Yeah.
I'm gay,
Mm-hmm.
and the emotions that come with that.
Yes.
Of just verbalizing that.
Like verbally confessing to yourself. Yeah.
In a car.
Yeah.
Or like in a journal.
A journal.
Something
totally.
where it's just like, I'm going to say it to myself. Even that first thing, I think allows a space to where we're going to still have to deal with this one, but then we can also engage with other spaces as we're engaging with the shame and we're engaging with the compartmentalization and these aspects. But it takes that first moment, whether to ourselves or to other people, of just going, this is a reality.
Yeah.
And the thing, I have to declare the thing that I think currently makes me unlovable.
Yes.
And, that's going to be our first journey on how to accept that this thing that I have so much shame about could be a good thing.
Yes.
It could.
It doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be
bad.
Make me unlovable.
No, I can actually find good things in my life.
Yes.
From
this. Yes. Oh, that's a light. Turning a light on.
Yeah. Which, it comes from the initial acceptance that it's part of my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so crazy because shame is like, we all have it, but rarely do we have language to define it for ourselves, even the experience of it, like what it does to our bodies, like where it shows up, what elicits that shame. And I think even in my work with clients and, humans, it's the first step for all of us.
Yeah.
Like we're almost like truly walking in the dark and in the mud before we can realize like, oh, I'm walking in mud and this is like keeping me down. And I need to recognize when this is happening to me so I can make the move to, in your work, to dignity. So on this opposite side, how would you define dignity?
Yeah, I think that I like to use there's some scriptures that come to mind of like, for God so loved the world, which is a verse if you grew up in church, like, you for God so loved the world that he gave.
You probably heard that somewhere.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. The key thing I love to point out about this is that it starts with for God so loved the world. That, again, it's not a thing of I do these things and then I am loved.
It begins in
love. It begins with for God so loved the world. Yeah. And then there's also another one where it's like we love because he first loved us. That it is rooted in the idea that I am intrinsically loved.
Yes.
Simply because I am. And I am a child of God. I am created in this divine image. And that being able to understand that I myself am loved by, you said, like you said last episode, by love. Yeah. I am loved by love.
It's powerful.
That the idea is being able, and I think that here's the really hard part. Like, I think the first step of all of this dignity work is seeing goodness in my gayness, in my queerness.
Yes. And your difference.
In my difference. But then even going farther than that, to just go even beyond my gayness, even beyond my queerness.
Yes.
I am foundationally loved and have dignity. My gayness is part of that, but it is so much more as a holistic being, loved, and there is a joy there. There is a beauty there that God unconditionally loves me.
Yeah.
And that if God can love me, I can love me.
Oh, preach, brother. Let's go.
Which is such the scary part for us, I think, especially in Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
But Jesus, I think, talks about this when he says, love others as you would have them love you. And so the basis of that understanding is that I have to understand that I am worthy of receiving that love if I believe that I can have that to then give it to other people.
Yes.
If I don't believe that I should or am worthy of receiving that love from people, of how they should treat me, no wonder I'm going to treat other people awfully.
Totally.
Because that's how I'm thinking.
Yeah.
They should treat me.
And no wonder you're going to treat yourself poorly.
And I'm going to treat myself that poorly.
Yeah.
But like being able to know, wow, this human being that I am is so unconditionally loved by God that I should love, him or her or them. That is the basis of dignity.
Yes.
He probably isn't the person who came up with it, but it was the place I heard it was Keith Case from our church, our head pastor. And the ways that I remember him first talking about how do we look at this Good Samaritan story as me being the person on the street, but then also me being the Good Samaritan who comes.
Yeah.
And like being able to take some of these stories of compassion and putting ourselves in all of the roles.
All of the roles, yeah.
Is profound.
It is.
And I think that's the dignity.
Yes.
The dignity is seeing that I am the person on the side of the road that I need to help. There is a profound dignity in this. And that's what I think it means to have it, of that if God can love me, I can love me.
Yes.
And others can love me.
Yes.
And it's not about I can love me because other people love me. It's not about all of these things. It's about the fact that God loves me. And because of that, regardless of how other people act towards me, because of what they're going through, regardless of my circumstances in the world, regardless of the victimization that I force, which obviously is hard and hurtful, but the more I can internalize the love of God and then therefore love this person that I am, then I am going to be able to engage in this broken, crazy world, not based on trying to get them to love me, but going, this is who I am. And this is how I'm going to operate in the world based on that. Can
you imagine a world that has internalized that?
Oh my God.
Everything would be different.
Everything would be.
Yeah.
But that's how Jesus does it.
Totally. Well, that's why his love was so transformative in his ministry and presence. Because he was flipping it upside down, because he knew that that's not what was happening. It was so works-based. It was so behavior-based. It was so
all of these things.
All of that. All of using people based.
Yeah.
And he's like, guys, that's not it.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Even when you look at how he engages with Romans, like the people who are oppressing him, the people who are seeking the downfall of his people, and so rightly so, he has every reason to be mad.
Yeah.
But like he has such a basis of understanding who he is, not just as the divine Son of God, but I really think as a human being.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That, because fully God, fully man, this whole aspect, he understands who he is and how he is loved, that then he can engage in the world with the very people who hate him.
Yes. He had no ego.
He had no ego.
That's so admirable.
It's just so, how do you do that?
I know. Well, because he's more divine than me.
Yeah.
But what an amazing model to learn from and grow with,
And grow. And then.
Because it's truly his belief in how loved he was.
Yes.
That he was able to.
And so I think in that way, this kind of going back to the whole thing of why is this the first movement, just as we'll talk later about, isolation to intimacy is the culminating thing. Because as we do all of this work, we find that intimacy being built. I think that when we can start in the shame to dignity, it will naturally build how we engage with these other movements.
Oh, 100%.
Because as we're saying here, when I can be motivated out of dignity, when I can operate in the world out of dignity, it's going to build joy. It's going to build gratitude. It's going to build transparency of how I view God. All of these things are going to like flow out of that.
Yep.
And so that's why like
it has to be the first step.
It has to be the first step.
Yeah. Yes. Gorgeous.
In the last episode, I mentioned a book called Spiritual Direction and the Gay Person by James Empereur. That was vital for me in my research because it was one of the only ones I found which specifically addressed spiritual formation within queer experiences.
Oh,
I hunted him down in a retirement home for priests.
No way.
I did.
Amazing.
I was like, I need to talk to this man because he's the only one who
he's
has
like the granddaddy.
Yeah. And I actually got the chance to interview James Empereur for this podcast.
I think the gay person or the LGBT person needs to, the only way they can go is by loving themselves first of all,
He then began to outline a really fascinating concept that could literally be a whole podcast in and of itself, of how the orientation towards otherness for straight people and the orientation towards sameness for gay people actually affects our relationship with love of self.
The difficulty with the straight person is that their life is so ordered in terms of otherness and other love that they often don't take time to love themselves. So a lot of the work, I think, when you're working with straight people is to try to help them to learn to love themselves in a way that deals with the other love. Now, it's also true, of course, for the gay person in terms of their relationship with others. But they have to overcome the fact that it's not taken for granted, their own goodness, their own lovableness, in order to look at the love of self. I'm not sure if you follow me.
As we talked, he brought up the important distinction between self-love and selfishness.
Or to realize that love of self is not the same thing as selfishness, Talking about the love of self, many people can't distinguish that from being selfish. So even your very, very good straight person tends to move to love of others as a way of expressing their love for God. That's a hurdle they have to get over in order to enter into love of self. And for the gay person, often it's because there are not enough people who are affirming them in themselves that they should love themselves. I mean, that's even I find even when people accept them, if I might put it that way, even when they're accepted, they're not accepted in a way to love themselves. They're accepted like, oh, well, that's the way God operates, or that's the way God works, or, those kinds of things. God does not make trash, all those kinds of things that you hear.
Yeah.
But it's never a real strong affirmation that their life is one of love. And, the basic love is love of self, which has to flow over into love of others. So it's not, I think, of course, it's the way society works, but it's the messaging, I think, is the important thing here.
We can often fear that love of self is just a cover for selfishness. And sure, many manipulate it in wording, but whereas selfishness becomes an echo chamber devoid of care for others or even God, except as tools to be used, self-love flows from our own value as God's creations and propels us to lead others towards that same love. I mentioned earlier in this episode the importance of finding goodness in our queerness. Now, that may not sit well with you, whether because you may not be able to find goodness within your own sexuality or gender identity, Or because as a straight Christian or a pastor who holds to a traditional sexual ethic of marriage as between a man and a woman, you wonder, I cannot encourage that without completely abandoning my beliefs. Eve Tushnet in her book Tenderness lays out a beautiful vision for this very thing, especially for LGBT Christians who still believe in the traditional sexual ethic themselves. She writes, "There is often so much beauty, self-gift, and holiness in our own same-sex loves, and in the same-sex loves of the people around us. Scripture isn't silent about this beauty. These loves are not simply blank spaces, places where God turns his face away, aching absent limbs in the body of Scripture. God in his word and in the history of the church offers us guidance on how to bring our disorderly loves into harmony with his will." She goes on to explain that finding goodness in our sexuality and our gender identity does not necessarily have to mean it must be tied to sexual expression. Same-sex love is much more expansive than sexual expression, and when applied to spirituality, should be a gift for all people, regardless of orientation. Similarly, James Empereur opens the first chapter of his book, stressing this to spiritual directors and those caring spiritually for gay people. He says, "On the acceptance of this premise that God has given a gift in gay spirituality, all authentic and successful spiritual direction with gays and lesbians stands or falls. A spiritual director who cannot embrace it would be advised to limit his or her work with homosexuals. This does not mean that the director must accept everything which passes as gay or lesbian activity. It does not imply that the director cannot adhere to his or her church's position of the morality of homoerotic activity. But it does mean that a director who wishes to devote considerable time to the direction of homosexuals ought not to see that particular orientation as something less than the heterosexual one. Ultimately, it will look different for different people, but there is no movement forward in this without finding goodness in our sexuality. This does not mean that there aren't areas of brokenness or areas where we must grow, but sexuality is so closely tied to our sense of self that we must find goodness at its core, or we won't find a route to dignity."
So in this movement, what have you found through your own experience and even through the research as avenues by which we do this move from shame to dignity?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's going to be a word that we both love, vulnerability.
Yeah, I knew it.
Because ultimately, again, we talked about before is like the gospel of so much what Jesus talks about is the idea of coming into the light, of bringing everything into the light in the messy ways that we are. I have fallen so in love with Psalm 139. And I never, I'll be honest, when I first started this project, if you had brought up Psalm 139, I'd been like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Like,
it's like,
heard it.
You put it on, it's
Precious. Like when a baby's born, you're like,
fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then as I've engaged with the full Psalm and the messiness of this full Psalm, of like it, and understanding it not as some theologically abstract statement of being fearfully and wonderfully made, but as a journey, that Psalm 139 starts with, you know my every thought. You know when I sit down, when I stand up, you know everything about me.
Yep.
And then moves to, no matter where I go, you're there.
Yeah.
If I go all the way down to hell, you are there. Like there's nowhere I can go from you.
Yep.
And then you've talked about this beautifully so much, that one phrase that depending on your translation, I can't remember which one it is, but it's like, but even darkness isn't dark to you.
Yes. Like even my darkness
is
is not dark to you, God.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good news.
It's good news.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, when I can understand that no matter where I go, that God is present, that is the moment that a gay club becomes a temple.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
the places that wherever I've imagined in my life are the places where God could never be there, that becomes holy ground.
Yes.
Because not because of the circumstances, not because of the location, not because of the people, it's because God is there.
Yep.
And that it's the understanding that God sees me, God knows me, God is present with me wherever I go, that my darkness isn't dark to him, that then I can declare, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yep.
Because I am seen and I am known. Vulnerability is the process of being fully known by ourselves and God and others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Brene Brown talks about vulnerability as, dang it.
I could tell you.
Yeah, please.
I don't have enough.
Please do it.
She defines vulnerability as emotional exposure without certainty.
Yes.
So like we're sharing ourselves in some way without certainty of how it will be received.
Exactly.
But if we translate this into this conversation, if we believe our vulnerability and our exposure will be received by God with love, then now we are more motivated to share.
Yes.
We're more, if I believe that when I open the closet and I step into the light, that I'm not going to be shamed, you know, by God at least, and maybe by some like safe community people, then I'm more motivated to move out of that, which is where I'm going to find dignity and light.
Yeah.
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 I don't know if that was the thing that you were trying to say about what she says, but
that's beautiful.
She does all the things about vulnerability.
All of the things. There was another quote that I was thinking of as well that she says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage.
Yeah.
And I just think for me, why that was really helpful was kind of to the point of what you were talking about of, you know, I've talked on podcasts and I've done all of these things. And after a while, sharing parts of your life is like, oh yeah, like the world knows those things.
Yeah.
But it's the moments I share the things that regardless of how true they actually are, maybe it's even just how I see myself.
Yeah.
But like feels like this truthful statement of I hate myself or I feel this thing about myself. I think that's why it doesn't even have to be truth. It has to be something that I believe is true and that there is the courage of stating it.
Yep.
That like, even for me who gets in front of a microphone all the time and talks, but some of the things after a while, I'm so used to saying them. But the moment I can then say the thing that
feels scary
to say that there's like this power in being known. But and then as you said, when I feel that, I have the courage to share more.
Yeah.
And to be more known.
Yes. Yeah. And with the right people or to the right receiver, that truth that feels like your truth, but maybe isn't all the way truth, gets to be transformed hopefully into more truth. Because even I know recently you were sharing something with me that you were maybe telling a truth that felt like not true, but your brain was believing it is true. 100%. And I remember being like, oh, that's like totally untrue, but I hear you and I love you. And I understand that that's like what your body is feeling right now.
Yeah.
But like, let me just remind you, like, that ain't true, brother.
True. That's not,
But I can do it in a way that's not shaming. That's just like, I love you. And like, I'm going to keep believing that's not true.
That's not true.
About you until you come back into that right belief, you know? Yeah.
Being able to state it, then be able to expose it.
Yeah, but it's like we need to say it because it's what we're experiencing. And that's, again, so much of what we don't, especially within like Christian world, we don't say the things that we're experiencing because we're so afraid that someone will hear it and then shame us for literally just having a human moment. Or like literally our brains are saying something that, you know. Yeah,
because the thing is I have to have it together.
Right. Yeah.
I have to understand it all. And I think this is where, I think it's Romans 2, where it says, it is that God leads us. This is not the direct exact quote, but like basically what leads us to repentance is the kindness, tolerance, and compassion of and patience of God. Yeah. That again, coming back to the thing, if God can do this to me, then I can do it to me. Of like being able to expose the parts of me that I believe about myself, whether they're true or not.
Yeah.
And having kindness and compassion towards that leads to the repentance, and repentance being the idea that that's not true, and I can actually move into what is true.
Or like changing that belief.
Yeah, changing this belief.
That I don't have to believe that about myself anymore.
Yeah.
It leads us to the opportunity to change our minds.
Exactly. Because that's ultimately what repentance is. Repentance is the moving in a new direction. That I have believed this about myself. I have understood this to be true. I have moved in this direction. I've operated based out of this belief. And I'm going to move based out of my own dignity and my own love. But it comes through that vulnerability and allowing ourselves to be seen. And until it's just so much until we can have that vulnerability of being fully seen and fully known, we will never get to the foundation of fearfully and wonderfully made, you know?
Yes.
Like that won't be part of it. It has to come through vulnerability.
Yes. are there specific avenues in which vulnerability is most healthfully lived out? Do you know what I mean? Or like, if you want to add an idea of that.
Yeah, like where it's best lived out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or where it's not. Because even Brene says, like, if I'll answer my own question to start you off, but she's like, people earn the right to hear your story.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like there are spaces in which vulnerability being practiced are going to be more beneficial, like with a coach or with a spiritual director or with a healthy pastor, maybe that's gone to counseling and done their work, you know?
Yes.
Or with a counselor, a therapist, whatever.
Yeah.
Or like safe community.
Yeah. One of the things I've learned on this journey, especially, so I'll do some work with people about integrity, basically integration. How do I like have harmony of all the parts of me? And I love that you're bringing this up because, it's important to understand, people are not owed every part of you.
Correct.
That we build by creating that in safe spaces. And never does every person need to know every part of your life.
No, that's like a weird myth, almost like when you first, I remember like I first like started learning about vulnerability and I was like, oh, I got to tell everyone everything and that's how I'll be known.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wait, no, you actually don't, baby.
Yeah. I feel like it's a lot.
And like makes it risky because not everyone can hold it in a way that's going to feel helpful or transformative for you.
Yes. Yeah. I remember when I started college and being out of high school. I was out in high school, but obviously it's high school. There's like different situations of it. And I just felt so much freedom in college of like, I would have been the guy in the grocery store being like, move, I'm gay. Like, this is the thing you need to know about me in the grocery store. Yes. Random person. Everyone needs to know this thing.
Yeah.
You know, because you start it and then you like share it.
Yeah.
And understandably, because you've never gotten to. Right. Then you quickly learn, well, first of all, both for myself and other people, do they even really, are they owed this, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I even learned this as I started doing public speaking and I would share things. And then after a while, I was like, no.
Maybe I'll keep that one closer next time.
That doesn't need to be shared.
That's like a maturing forming process. Yeah.
I feel like what I've learned through this process is, even as we talk about, like, so if not everyone is owed everything, but we're talking about integrating all the parts of us. Yeah. I like to more walk with people in the idea of, regardless of what details people know about me, does it feel like they know the same person? Like if they were to learn more, if they were to learn a new part of my life, would they be shocked because it completely goes against what they know of me? Or would they be like, wow, oh, okay, but like that tracks with what I know of you?
Yeah, that's good.
You know, being able to know that regardless of what details they know about me, do they know the essence of the same person I am? Because if it's at a point where this person knows this type of person that for me to be, but then this group knows this type of person, regardless of the details, it's going to be shocking to learn more because it's like, wait, that's completely in a different realm of things. You know, as I work with like celibate gay Christians, for instance, there can feel this belief in church that I have to tell everyone that I'm celibate, either to earn their ability, you know? And one of the things I go like, obviously there's sometimes you might need to share it, but like, just as no one is owed to know your sex life, no one is owed to know your lack of a sex life. No one. And so even within these kind of different conversations, regardless of your experience, that we feel this either a desire in ourselves to share it, or we might feel, I have to tell people this. Or else like for instance, I have to tell people that I'm celibate because if not, then I'm in a very conservative church and they're just gonna, reject me for being gay, which I don't want to put that in. That is a reality.
Yes.
That's,
everywhere.
Everywhere. So that is a reality and we have to make those decisions. But then sometimes it can build in our belief of, I have to clarify to everyone that I'm celibate. And when I work with celibate gay Christians, I like to first go, are they owed that? Because that's a private part of you. Yes. But it feels often, especially if you've grown up in the conservative church, that you have to clarify what kind of Christian you are.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
Or what kind of gay you are.
Even in hetero worlds, we're around like purity culture. It's like, why do we feel like we need to announce like
No.
I'm in a relationship? Oh, but we're not having sex.
But we're not having sex.
It's like, okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
we're
with
just
people-
that pressure to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And with people who are trusted and comfortable and you want to speak into that.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Talk about it. Talk about the complexities where you haven't really lived out your like
Mhm.
values well, or where
Totally.
you are living them out.
Mhm.
But it is not, people aren't owed that.
Totally.
And I think that's been a thing that I've been learning so much in my own life of like, you know what? People aren't automatically owed the different aspects of my life.
That's right.
And it's funny to see how people feel that they are owed and having
Oh,
to walk
interesting.
through things. And I'm like, oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's great for you.
Yeah, it's fascinating because vulnerability can be weaponized, and so
really
that's
can.
it. Instead of it being an avenue to like usher our shame towards dignity, it can be
It can build
creating more shame.
Yeah.
So that's our responsibility as like people in this world, is to
Yeah.
create containers, and a container within ourselves first and foremost that is like our own self-compassion and
Yeah.
our own dignifying, so then we can also extend that to
Yeah.
others.
Yeah. Because I think that's absolutely, because part of dignity
Mm-hmm.
is knowing the value of my story,
Yeah.
knowing the value of the parts of me.
Yep.
And that comes from people will benefit from hearing this.
Yes.
But also people aren't owed it
That's right.
in all
Yeah.
of these aspects.
So good. Okay, so what spiritual practices are we incorporating into this specific movement from shame to dignity?
Yeah. So part of how I operated with all of these was there could be a ton of different practices, but I tried to stick with 3. I think one of them I added a 4th one just because it just felt like it really needed to be there. But here I have 3, and I tried to operate with practices, a practice that connects us to ourselves, a practice that connects us to others, and then a
Yes.
practice that connects us to God.
Very cool. Love that.
It might not be always perfectly in that way, but that's kind of my route in all of this. So the first practice is the practice of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to our bodies, listening to our desires, our stories, being able to have the curiosity of what is happening. You know, like I said, that power of writing in a journal, I am gay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this understanding of what's going on
Yes.
below the surface.
Yeah.
I think that so much of what Jesus is engaging us with is inviting us to be curious about ourselves and our stories and what lies behind all of it.
Yep.
And a lot of that can just come from writing your own story out, because you can be so surprised
Yes.
with what happens and what
Yes.
is revealed to you
Yep.
that you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so many times in the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus is saying, you've heard this said, but then I say this, what Jesus is inviting is like, he's saying, you've heard it said, don't do this thing, but I am inviting you to the reality that it is about the desires that lay behind this, and not so much of more legalism, but the invitation that it's not about the behavior, it's about our heart, that we are desiring creatures.
Yes.
More than knowing creatures, more than doing creatures. We're all of the things, but we are driven by desires in our stories. So the more we can, whether that's through journaling, whether that's through any type of meditation, or sometimes it's great. You can do it with other people, you know, so you can do reflection with other people. But being able to, when moments of shame come up, when things are coming up with different stories of my life that just feel like there's something there to explore, being able to write it out, even when you feel like you know it.
Yes. Because even at each season of your life, you might actually reflect on that story, that same story, with different eyes.
Yes.
Because we're growing and we're forming. And so like,
Learning more.
Every time I tell this one part of my story, like every year I feel like it changes, like maybe the lens I'm looking at it just based on my own healing or my own maturing. So that reflection is so helpful.
Sewing. And I think then even a more complex form of reflection within the spiritual aspect is, I found, so I do in spiritual direction with people, imaginary prayer, and sometimes can go through memories and be able to invite God into that space.
Yep.
Especially spaces that felt like God was not there, and be able, what is it like to this story or this part of me that has felt completely separate from faith? What does it look like to invite the presence of God into those moments and just notice what happens with you when you notice that? Because again, it's that whole thing of going even in the depths, you are there. So being able to have that reflection going over stories is beautiful. I mean, we have 4 different versions of Jesus' story in scripture.
Yeah.
So there is a repetitiveness to coming back to stories and, noticing things, as you said. Yeah, 100%. The second one is confession, as we talked about before. Confession is the idea of bringing things, of being known before other people. I'm sure we often come of this as like, I'm going to tell you the bad things that I'm doing. And I think that can be part of it. And that absolutely can. But it's the idea. It's not just that. It's not just that.
And that's what our brains maybe associate with it because of how it was presented to us in culture.
Yes.
But gosh, confession is so much more than just, this is what I did last night.
Yeah. This is a thing of like, hey, here are the parts of me. It's the vulnerability. Here are the parts of me. Here's maybe a story I was just reflecting on.
Yeah.
And being able to engage with that. Bringing light to the parts of us that feel that they are just stuck in darkness. That is the root of what I think Jesus is inviting us to with confession when it says confess to one another, what it looks like to be seen and known in a community. And then the third one is actually communion. And I like to recognize in this that communion is very different in different denominations.
Yeah, true.
And there are very important distinctions in between them. So I don't want to change that. And, I want to acknowledge that. But I think that communion is a powerful understanding of embracing God's presence no matter our circumstances. And this is where it's going to be a little different than how a lot of people have engaged it. But the way I'm so impacted by communion is when you take the Last Supper of Jesus, Judas was there. Like Jesus had Judas, the person who was about to betray him, at the Last Supper with him. And all of his disciples who were about to deny him, about to run away, all of these people are there. And so if all of them are able to be at the Last Supper, how powerful it can be when we are in moments where we feel in darkness to allow for communion to be a power of inviting God's presence in to our lives, of being able to see like God's presence is not based on me, but on God. And being able to see the power of communion in that moment is another act of inviting God's presence into the darkness. So again, and I think that there are reasons why, I've done some different work and people would say like, there's passages in Corinthians where it's like, you should examine yourself, before going to the table. And when we look at that, a lot of what Paul is talking about is specifically around how they were engaging with each other. So he's saying, this is supposed to be a thing. Communion is a communal thing. And they were kind of doing it in ways that was blocking off other people. So it's like there needs to be the resolution here because communion's not just about me with God, but us with God, which is why we do it in church settings because it's not really something we do on our own. And I want to emphasize that it is a thing we do as a community. So actually what I would say is where if you're hearing this and going, well, what about these passages with Paul? I would actually argue Paul's talking about the communal aspect of this, that we have at times tried to keep people from the table, but we're being called to do this. So just to add in that disclaimer, because I know sometimes this can be one that feels scary for people.
Yeah, even a tab in my brain opened. I'm like, oh, wait, what about that?
What about that? So,
but again, it's less about the behavior and more about the intention. So it's like Paul's actually inviting us into unity.
Unity, yes.
And like not inviting you away from the table, but inviting you into unity.
Yeah. Because what he's actually inviting in it is for you to reflect before you take it.
Yeah. That's good.
And so reflect. Reflect on the dark parts of you. It doesn't mean, hey, go get this fixed, beforehand. Even, there's passages where Jesus is like, hey, if you have an issue with your brother and you go to make a sacrifice, go and make right with him. Ultimately, what Jesus is talking about is the fact how so many people of his time thought that they were saved by sacrificing a lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And what Jesus is talking about is not this whole thing of like, you have to be perfect before you go to a church service.
Yeah.
He's saying that's not what saves you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not spirituality.
No.
Like, killing a lamb on an altar. What spirituality is about the connectivity, that there is a brokenness between you and your sibling.
Yeah.
And that's the act of sacrifice. That is the act of spirituality that happens, where we need to reflect on what is creating this divide between me and my siblings, or me and my people. So just bringing those in, because I think that ultimately all of these are about, we're getting to the heart of what this is about, rather than, hey, I have to have everything right before I come to a church service or before I come to the communion table. That actually, it's another reminder that none of this is about us getting it right. It is about the presence of God coming into darkness. And so the communion table can be a beautiful place for us to sit and reflect on the places that feel scary and yet go to the communion table.
To move from actual shame to dignity.
Yes. And the power of that. So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that these movements allow us to begin to embrace dignity, embrace dignity before ourselves, of writing out the things that just seem so scary, recognizing parts of ourselves that we never realized, but then also going before people and going before God in new ways of going, again, this person that I am is like so deeply loved, and I can love this person. Walking with people through shame can be difficult because we want to fix things. We have to make space to hear and witness the shameful things people believe and internalize. As we witness and sit in it with them, we are able to also encourage them with truths of dignity. But we have to have patience that just because we encourage people with words doesn't somehow suddenly remove shame. The space to witness and then allow for that shame to be transformed into dignity takes time. Another thing that proved to be helpful in my case studies for this project to help directees combat shame as queer people was helping them see the dignity of other queer people. When we begin to see the dignity in other people like us, we can slowly begin to find our own dignity. On 3 occasions, with case studies that were facing massive walls that blocked them from seeing any dignity in themselves related to their sexuality and or gender identity, I encouraged them to find ways to observe, pray for, or even get to know queer people, whether in their sphere of community or simply people that they saw on the street or in a coffee shop or bar. Prayer became a powerful tool for some to see other queer people through God's perspective, which helped them to see themselves more clearly. Always remember that whenever contexts come up where you don't know what to say or do, rather than trying to come up with some kind of solution or advice, empathy for what is being expressed will always go a long way. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode where we will be diving into the second movement of murkiness to transparency. The songs in this episode included Casualties by Elijah Herral, Not As Easy As It Seemed by Elijah Herral, Arrow by Paradise Hymns, and Near Again by Paradise Hymns. You can learn more about my practice and work at holyourselves.org. I provide one-on-one spiritual direction, cohort groups, and more. Special thanks to Sarah Claire Smith Calling for participating in this project. Also thank you to Lynn Melone, James Empereur, and everyone who has contributed to this project.
My shame has lost its hold, and my heart has come alive. You are near again, and you dwell within. You I'm just starting to see your heart deeper than any ocean, wider than I could ever imagine.